Hey guys, welcome back to another discussion video. So heads up, there's going to be nothing on the screen other than just this view of a Minecraft world going through its life. Um, I'm simply going to be talking, so you can treat this like a podcast. Go do something else while you listen to this. Go clean your room or do your laundry or something productive, because I'm sure there's something that you should be doing instead of watching YouTube. But if you are going to sit here and watch with me, and if you are going to be listening, I wanted to chat a little bit about the Nintendo Switch and a few thoughts. If you remember back when it was launched, something I had always wanted to do, and Skatem happened to wanted to do it at the same time. We did a discussion video on our thoughts on the Switch, and I really should have done one since then. I did a small update a couple days later that really covered a lot of the big questions we had. But I mean, I could have done an update, but I feel like just there wasn't a lot of information that was asked or was answered, not asked, answered between then and when we just got it at launch. There was a lot of stuff we still had questions about, and then we ended up getting it in our hands, and like we're like, oh, so that's how that's gonna work, or we still don't know. So there's that. Well, if you follow me on Twitter, which by the way I don't have a traditional, the Twitter handle's not easy. I was really dumb when I made this a long time ago and I didn't know how Twitter worked. You can find me probably by searching Minecraft Mike. But people have already stolen like at Minecraft Mike and at Mike7493, so mine's a little weird, but you can find me by links down in the description. But if you follow me there, you know that I got a Switch at launch. I did not pre-order. And if you listen to my discussions with Skatem, you would not be surprised to hear that I did not pre-order the game. Pre-order the system, for that matter. I was potentially even going to get The Legend of Zelda for just the Wii U. Well, since then, I got a job and I've moved to Florida, and um, it's been a little interesting. But I was like, hey, I got some money now. I'll treat myself for this move. It was also Thalia's birthday, so I was like, well, that's a better way. She's coming down. What's better way for her first night she's here on her birthday? She really wanted to play the new Zelda, so I was like, I'm gonna go ahead and try and get the Switch. So on the Thursday, I went out. People were telling me I went into the two GameStops here having a midnight release. I went into both of them. They were like, "Good luck, you're not going to get one." They were like, "We have less than 5, but more than one Switches we can sell that are not currently pre-ordered." And you can go. They were like, "There's no one in line yet." I went in the morning on the second, like 10, 11 in the morning when they opened, and they were like, well, there's no one in line yet. You can go sit there all night long. The first one was like, but we'll do the pre-ring at 10:30, but you can sit there all night long. And I was like, yeah, right. I don't want one that bad. Um, so they didn't have any at Walmart, but I checked at Best Buy, and they're like, yeah, we might have a couple, but we're not going to be selling those until the next day. So I was like, okay, let me drive a little bit farther to the other side of town to the second GameStop. And they gave me the same story, except for they were doing the pre-ring at 6 p.m. I had never heard of a GameStop doing that before. So that basically meant if where I was in line at 6 p.m., I would purchase the Switch and then come back at midnight to pick it up. So I got there at like 1 o'clock, and I was like, okay, well, I'm still not going to wait out here for 5 hours. I have errands to run. So I went and ran errands to the grocery, blah, 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 did all my errands, and it was like 4 o'clock, like 3:30. I was like, okay, let me head back over there. I'm like, I don't mind waiting a couple hours. And I get there, there's one person standing in line. I walk in, I'm like, if I get in line right now, am I guaranteed to switch? She was like, yep. So I got in line as number 2, hung out with some guy for 2 hours. In the last hour, if you saw when I was tweeting, other people showed up. There ended up being about 6 to 8 of us that did not have a pre-order that were trying to buy one that night. One of them, of course, was a scalper that was like, I don't want this. I'm just going to sell it on eBay for $400. A couple of them were they were so excited. This one guy shows up in a suit, and he's like, like 30, and he was just probably the most excited person there about the Switch, and it was really funny. But there's a bunch of guys there. And we were waiting at 6. There was some people there that hadn't finalized their pre-order yet. They were going to pay off the rest of it, get their official receipt, which you had to do by 6 p.m. that night if you want it. They were in line too. So I walk in, I get it. I was number 2. I think they said they had 6. They actually ended up having six Switches to sell without a pre-order, and 2 of them were the red and blue, and the other 4 were gray. So I got the guy in front of me, which was the first person. I was second person. I got the last red and blue one. So I came back at midnight, and spur of the moment, I got Zelda. But then I was also like, okay, the girlfriend's coming. We're gonna want a 2-player game, and It turns out she really likes Bomberman. I did not know that. She's like, yeah, I used to play all the time as a kid. You should have got Bomberman instead. I'm like, well, now you tell me. But I got 1-2 Switch because I really wanted to actually see what Nintendo was trying to show off with HD Rumble, the motion controls on that. Because I wanted some sort of competitive game. So on the spur of the moment, I ended up buying that and got Zelda and got the Switch. Came back at midnight, except for at midnight there was probably like 50 people there. Maybe like 60 people. Because how many people I realized got behind me when I showed up at like 11:45, 11:30ish, and then waited till midnight. And a lot of people there were to pick up Zelda too, for Wii U as well. In addition to Switch, I mean, there's a ton of people there. I was very impressed. It was one of the biggest. I mean, I'd never done that at midnight for like the 3DS. My place opened early at like 8 a.m. So I had that, but there was only a couple people. It wasn't that big of a deal. But this was a huge launch. People were excited. And that's funny, like the police officer, the garbage crew, the parking lot cleanup crew, like everyone was like walking by like, what's launching? They're like, oh, that's coming out today. You know, everyone was like really excited about that. So that's my story of the Switch. I ended up getting one. Of course, the system was 300, Zelda was 60, and 1-2 Switch was 50. I'll give you the quick overview for those of you that don't want to listen to this anymore. You've decided you don't want to listen to this anymore. Bottom line, Switch is great, but it's very incomplete. It has a long way to go, and over the next year, it'll become from just a cool system to something that's going to become extraordinary, and everyone is going to own one, and it's going to be amazing. Zelda is the best game I've ever played in my entire life, and it has so much left to it, and it is going to probably be the best game I'm going to play for my entire life. If you have not bought it yet, I highly recommend it on the Switch. The Switch is the graphic system and the portability, it's incredible. You have to get it. 1-2 Switch is really dumb. Thally and I have like 2 games on it that we thought were kind of funny and enjoyed playing. It was a little competitive, but otherwise we played them once and it was really silly, and we were, you know, you're so used to like, I'll get to the details about that later, but that's just my opinion. If you're looking for a multiplayer game on the Nintendo Switch, the HD Rumble thing, there's like one game that really I thought showed that off, but nothing else really did. So if you are looking for a 2-player game, I don't recommend 1-2 Switch. Bomberman, or even better because it has multiplayer, the what is it called, RMX Race or something, the game that's supposed to be like the spiritual game for F-Zero. You can download that on the eShop. Recommend that instead. Okay, now I'm going to get into the details. I'm going to start with the actual Switch system itself. I'm going to have this in my hand while I do it so I can try and remember to talk about everything. I did not do an unboxing because there's plenty of those out there already, and I figured afterwards I'd do something. Plus, I was with Embers, and you know she wanted to see. I was with her opening it for her birthday, so I wasn't going to try and make a video out of it. But both of our reactions when we saw it in the box were, holy crap, this is tiny. It is so small. I thought it was huge, but it's so tiny. I mean, it's incredible how small it is. And I do have to say, I was really worried. Like the buttons are even smaller. The layout's really weird with the knob in the middle. But I can say that they are not too small. They couldn't be any smaller, but they are not too small. It still works. To play the whole thing, meaning if you have it in the doggy ears, I don't have a Pro Controller, but if you have it in the doggy ears, which is I like to play in, it's great. Or if you're playing it actually connected to the screen, it's very comfortable for the Zelda, for gaming. Very comfortable with the buttons. I have very little issues with it. I mean, the red joystick, I have a little problem with that position sometimes because it should be further down, honestly. But it's not horrible. Like sometimes my thumb kind of bumps it while I'm pressing buttons in Zelda, but it's not too big of a problem. And if you're playing with them individually, again, they couldn't be any smaller, but they're not too small. If you snap on the little extra piece on them to make the SL and SR buttons better to push, it works. It's great. But otherwise, that's that. They're just very tiny. An HD Rumble, other than the ball, trying to feel the balls inside of the wooden box. Nothing else really shows it off other than it just has like, it's just high speeds and a little different vibration. You don't actually feel things moving around inside. So that was a little disappointing. The stand on the back is pretty flimsy. It's dumb. I've actually been using, which I saw on Twitter, instead of using the little stand it has on it, the stand I had for my Wii U, which I never used, I actually like had it. It was still like wrapped up in my little gaming box. But the Wii U gamepad had a stand, a little plastic stand it could sit in that wasn't the charger, and the Switch actually fits perfectly in that while I'm playing or while doing stuff. But of course, I can't just set it down and watch something on it because guess what? We'll get to this in a second. um, so that's about all my features with that. The touchscreen's great. Of course, all the Nintendo screens are very reflective. That drives me crazy. So if you're playing in any sort of like sunlight or if it's like bright in your room and Valerie would be sitting next to me, I'd have to like angle it at her so she could see what was going on because I have like a window behind me, even though the curtains were over it or the blinds were down. So that's always a problem with Nintendo systems, but it's fine. The speakers sound great. It has a fan on the top that keeps it cool, and I've never noticed it really get that warm. Maybe a little bit of warm while it's charging and playing while it's on the stand for the television, but the fan will randomly kick on. Like I would think it would kick on. I mean, it's always on, but usually you don't notice it. It just like sounds, it kind of gets droned out. But occasionally you'll actually like, what is that noise? Like, oh my gosh, this fan's like, I could like, you know, it's like blows your hair back. It's like cranks on, but I don't know when it does it and when it does not. Because it's not like after I've been playing for an hour and the thing's getting warm. It's like right when I start the game up, it's like roaring. I'm like, what in the world? But that's that. The game cards are so freaking small. I mean, they are they're literally like your thumbnail. That's what the size of them are. They are thumbnails. They are smaller than SD cards, than DSs. They are really tiny, but the boxes for the games are awesome. The slim little boxes, I really like them. If you're like not, if for Zelda and stuff, I think it's great. The little cases they come in. So I think those are well done with box art, size, all that stuff. All right, I think that's it about the specs of it. The actual system is very, very plain. It's very basic. It's very empty, especially when you first get it on. You're like, what in the world? But as you play games, plug them in and play demos, it kind of populates it a little bit better. Of course, I really like the user system. So it's really great because, for instance, Dahlia wanted to play her own Zelda storyline, and I was like, oh, I don't know how to make a second one because maybe you can only have one account. But if you make her an actual user account on the Switch, and then she plays the game with her user account, then she gets her own Zelda save file that way, and her own lineup of games and her own access to demos. It's really great, and it's also how you can access the Japanese eShop to download because the Japanese eShop has way more games on it with other games that have demos that you can download to play. Instead of just the American ones. So it's very basic, it's very plain, but it's almost like a nice change of pace. You're not over cluttered with, 12 icons that you never freaking use. It's very clean and it's very clean. The news thing is great. You just get little things, teasers about the games, but also it shows you how to explain stuff and how to do things. And it kind of has the default ones that it comes on are actually kind of cute the way they explain it. I love how easy it is to take screenshots. Literally zero lag. It's not like the 3DS when all your games where you sit there and wait and it clicks it. I mean, it's instant and it's super high quality. I haven't put them onto the computer yet, but you've seen me post them onto my Twitter and they look pretty good on the Twitter. So if I had a memory card plugged into it, I could copy them onto that, I believe, and then have them on the computer and see how they look that way, big blown up resolution. But yeah. So the controller, one thing I guess I can go back to that. People are talking about this. I do have desync issues with the left Joy-Con. Now, I really think it's just a range thing. Someone brought up a good point. Nintendo was probably just like trying to squeeze out some more battery life because they were hearing a lot of negativity about the battery length. So they lowered like the range on them, and it just kind of has a negative impact. And they're going to probably have to boost that back up in an update because not so much when I'm sitting on my couch, but if I'm laying back on my bed, which it's not that far. Like if I were to be at my living room at my parents' house, where we used to play with the Wii, it would be like twice that distance in that living room versus my little bedroom here. And I'm sitting there playing Zelda, and then all of a sudden links just like pulling to the left, and like I walked off a cliff, and I was like, I totally didn't tell him to do that. And it would tell me it's like still synced up, but the controller joystick will start doing weird things on its own, and then I have to like bring the controller out of my lap and like hold it out in front of me and point it at it, and then I'll get better. And then sometimes it'll just totally desync, and what you have to do is just press the button on the controller and it'll resync itself, or you got to click it back in. So it's not too bad, but it does need to get fixed. And if you do, it may cost you a death. So just keep that in mind if you're playing far across a room, not right in front of it, and you're disconnected. And especially if you're prone to just putting the controller in your lap or like having a blanket on your lap where it kind of might block it a little bit, you might have that issue. So that is a negative issue I've noticed with it. That does need to be fixed. But I haven't had any screen issues that some people have talked about. But they do appear very few and far between. The left Joy-Con issue is the only one that appears to be pretty widespread. So yeah, the amiibo scanning on the joystick works pretty well. No issues with that. It's kind of weird they put it there, but that's the way it is. You'll notice that the right controller is significantly heavier than left. It's like 2 to 4 times heavier than the left controller because it has the amiibo scanner in it and also has the IR camera as well. So you will notice that. And yeah, that's about that. The eShop is very, very plain and it's very empty. There's nothing hardly on it. But there are a few games that are download only, like Snipper Clips. There's one demo you can get right now. It is really dumb. I don't know how this happened. There is not a Netflix streaming app or an Amazon Video streaming app or a YouTube streaming app or an internet browsing app. There's a way to browse the internet on the Switch with a workaround while you connect to your internet. You can look it up online, so you can view the internet on your browser, but it's kind of like a workaround, weird thing that happens when you're in your internet settings. But man, why there is not Netflix? I still have to have my Wii U. Granted, I'm still playing some Wii and Wii U games occasionally, but the main reason I still have my Wii U connected up to the TV, and the main reason the Wii is still connected up to my parents' room and in our living room at home, my parents' house, is because it has Netflix streaming apps. Because if you don't have a smart TV, you still have to have an extra device. And I loved that the Wii U could be YouTube, Amazon Video, and Netflix. All of those, I'd watch it on my television, or rather on the gamepad, while I'd have it sitting at my desk or sitting in bed. Why the Switch doesn't have that, especially considering the portability of it, you can have a bigger screen than your cell phone. Nintendo did like a press release commenting on that, and they were like, oh, we don't think that's what's really going to sell our systems. Of course, we're in the works of getting those apps ready, but we're not doing that because we don't think it sells the system. It's the Nintendo brand and our fun and unique gameplay that sells it. Well, yes, but it'd be really nice if it had the Netflix. It'd be such an added bonus. Just like Nintendo never made the Wii U or the Wii a DVD or a Blu-ray player when the competitors were. And we had a PlayStation for a Blu-ray player at our living room, but we still had to have the Wii U didn't have that. It's dumb. Nintendo won't do it for some reason, but they better get those apps out soon. Like I can't imagine it's that difficult for Netflix to do, because most of it's like internet. It's a very small app that you have on it. Everything else is like brought to the app through the internet. But that has to have so do know that that's not out there yet if you're looking to get it. For whatever reason, Nintendo didn't make that a priority. That kind of like docked it down to points when I went to the eShop and like saw that wasn't there. I was like, what? Guess I'm still using the Wii U gamepad. That damn thing won't go away. It won't die. So yeah, I think that's about it that I've seen on this so far. I do want to say when you snap on the extra SL and SR buttons, they can get stuck. I put them on backwards the first time, not really paying attention because there's 0 instructions for anything with your Switch until you log it on and set up your news. Again, the left Joy-Con sometimes feels like it's a little loosely connected to the Switch, but it's very tiny. It's like a millimeter wobble where the right one doesn't do that at all. But I think that's just because it's flimsier because there's just really not much in it. Okay, that's the end of the hardware. Battery's pretty decent, considering what it is. I've played a couple hours of Zelda, no problem, without having to plug it in. And I have a phone charger for my Type-C because I have an LG G5. And that charger that came with that, if I'm not charging my phone, I'll plug it into my Switch at my bedside while I'm playing in bed on the tablet, on the portable mode, and it charges it just fine while I'm playing. Some people were saying you need like special chargers and stuff to keep up with it, because otherwise like it'll still drain while you play. But I didn't have that problem with that phone charger. So, and it's a generic Type C USB phone charger. So that's good to know. Okay, now quickly talking about the games. Snipper clips, it's fun. It just seems like it was a little short. Some of them are like really hard, and some of them are really easy. They don't really seem like they're lined out in a logical order of difficulty. But I guess it's also just how you approach to it. Some people might approach it where it was an easier way to do it. I would like to see that game be a little bit bigger and more in depth, in a franchise Nintendo works with more, because it's kind of a cute idea. It can be very frustrating to work with the other people, but it's also kind of adorable. And pretty hilarious trying to work it out too, because it's kind of lots. It just feels like it's a very sexual game, but it's really not at all. If you know what I'm saying when you play the game. 1-2 Switch. It should have been a packing game. Nintendo said if they put a packing game, they'd have to charge more for it, and it wouldn't make up the cost of developing the game. I don't see what development went into this game. There's zero visual. Like, I could make the visuals in Adobe Photoshop in a day, and then all they did was record some real life actors dressed up doing some silly poses for like 10 seconds to explain each game to you, which I found was very strange and kind of like cringeworthy, because it was like trying to be cute, but it was kind of cringeworthy on some of them. So yeah, I don't see how this development went into this. I mean, I guess with the motion controls, but you would have thought after the Wii they'd been pretty good at making the motion controls of it, and none of them are that in depth because the game lasts like 10 seconds. The quick draw game and the fake quick draw are probably the two most fun games to play with people, because it's pretty competitive. So those are fun, and then the feeling the balls around is a good way to demonstrate the HD rumble, but it's the only one that I felt like really did that. Some of them were just like weird, and we couldn't get them to work, and we both really sucked at them. One of them was the wizard one. We don't know like how to get that to it. Just we would just do it. It'd be like 5 minutes long, and then one of us would just somehow win. And like the one where you're like moving your hips around, some of them are just weird, and they didn't work, or they weren't fun at all. But I guess everyone's gonna have a different taste. But it is something to have. Like, to me, the value I'd place on this game is $20, or it should have came with my system. And Nintendo also, I think because they got the small hardware, the small hard drive space, they said, oh, we don't want to put that on the system and already limit the hard drive some more, because some people would just delete it right away and not open it. So I do understand that, but yeah, it's okay. What makes it worth it, other than just a $5 game, what makes it worth the $20 is the shuffle mode, where you basically can split into teams with a couple of people, and it's a competitive game because based on if you win the game, you spin, to move down the game board, but you play a whole random assortment of the games along the way. That's a little fun, and I understand like if you've got a couple drinks and you've got like 5 people over, or you're with your family with the younger kids, it might be kind of fun like the original Wii days were. So that makes it worth it in my opinion, because otherwise you don't know really which games to pick, and that's basically all we've played now after the very first time. After we played each game once through, that's the only couple times we've played that. We've gone back, Thali and I, to play that. So it can be fun. If you want to go check out the BitBlocks videos of it, if you have competitive or you're sitting with your friends, it definitely can be a fun game. But I know there are a lot of people like me that are not too impressed with it. I mean, I guess it's not. I just had a little higher expectations for it, because at first I was like, oh, that looks really silly. Like, there's not even visuals. You don't look at the TV at all. Like, they want to charge you $50 for this. I was kind of on that board the entire time, but I had higher expectations because I was like, okay, maybe this HD Rumble thing's incredible, and Nintendo's, there's a lot more of the games to it, but it is what it is. Looking back now, I would have rather have got one of the other two games, specifically the F-Zero Legacy game, so that I could play online and have raced, because that can be multiplayer locally as well. Last but not least, because this is now getting very long, Zelda Breath of the Wild. I will talk about this now. Like I said, the best game I've ever played in my life. Probably will forever be the best game I have played in my life. And it is, I mean, the visuals, Like, how did they make this? Because the details in the grass, everything is crazy. How detailed it is, and it's so random. It's not. I mean, I can't. It's literally like someone went every inch of this humongous game, and these regions are huge. I probably put in 20 hours in the game. Speaking of which, I'm going to be installing the parental controls app for the sole purpose of seeing my playtime on games, because there's no way to find that out in the game. You can see what day you played the game for the first time, but you can't see how long you've played it. And Zelda's not keeping track of my playtime. So I wonder if the system is, and when I connect up parental controls, if I'll get to see it. If not, it'll start counting it from there. But I'm guessing I put in like 20 hours, and I'm to like the second region. And there's probably, some people are saying they're beating the game in 50 hours, but I am by no means progressing the storyline very quickly. I'm doing all sorts of other things. I'm really exploring all the nooks and crannies, because I like to do that more than, I'm kind of mixing it up. I kind of get bored of exploring or doing shrines or fighting mobs, that I'll progress the storyline some. And I would estimate, based on just like the region size and how many temples I've gone through, I'd probably say I have like 100 hours of gameplay left, and I've done about 20. So that's a good estimate, but it might be more like 150 hours. So it's a massive game, and I'm going to be buying the expansion pass as soon as I get my internet set up for the end of the week, because I'm that excited about it, and I want the content and the new storylines and new shrines and stuff like that. So looking forward to that. I mean, just the details that someone went through and did this game, the graphics, the views are beautiful. The load times are a little lengthy, but that's understandable. There's also always new tips. Like, I hardly ever see repeated tips, and I'm actually like learn things by them that show up on the screen while it loads. So the only thing that frustrates me is I'll be in the same region, and I'll be teleporting from one shrine on one side to like one shrine on the other, and even though I'm like going right back and I'm in the same region and I'm in a kind of a close proximity, the game still has to totally do like its 20-second load time to like plot me in. Maybe it's not 20, it's probably like 10 or 15. But on the Wii U, know that because you have a CD and the Wii U is not as superior, your load times are probably going to be more like 20 to 30 seconds. It looks like most people have reported. So it will be long load times on the Wii U. But otherwise, there's no load times. Like, if you're going into a shrine, it's very short. Out of a shrine, it's like 10 or 15 seconds. And if you're teleporting around, it's about the same too, or when you start the game up. So, but the sleep mode is great. I'll leave myself like up, like ready to do a battle, or like halfway through a battle, and I'll just like put it in sleep mode, put it away, laid it next to my bed all night long. Only used 2% of battery. Woke back up, picked right back up in like 3 seconds from power button to unlock to like closing the menu. I was playing beautifully, seamlessly. It's really impressive how well they got that sleep system to work and how little battery it uses. There are some negatives about Breath of the Wild. It is different Zelda. I personally like this so much more. I understand all of the flaws that the last Zelda games had. I got so frustrated with Skyward Sword and not going to go back to get the last bit 100%. I got to like 95, but I was hating the game at the end of it. I was playing it just for the storyline before I went into Breath of the Wild, and I understand all the changes they made, and I support all of them. Some people will not. I haven't seen the big temples yet, so I can't comment on if they're really that great, but from what I've seen so far, I like the little ones, the quick ones you go through. I'm hoping that the bigger ones are going to be a bit better. From what I've heard, people have not liked them very much. They're a little lame, but we'll see how that goes. There are frame rate issues. If you play portable, there's a lot less. I've only get frame rate issues if I set off a huge explosion and kill 12 mobs at once, and there's a fireball and a grass fire, and then trees are getting burned down and falling over everywhere, and I'm taking damage as I'm tumbling down a hill. Yes, I get frame rate issues. It drops very shortly, but as soon as the explosion stops, everything else will continue at normal frame rates, but you will get a little bit of a frame rate drop when you do that. Now, if you play on the television, I've noticed a lot more. I'll be in a huge open field and I'll just be like running and the wind will be blowing and I will be plummeting constantly, like until I stop moving or I get through that area. Like there'll be sections where there's just too much grass. I think it's really the grass and the explosions that really can screw things up in the game, frame rate wise. It's not bad enough that it's like you can't do anything, but on the TV it is bad enough where it's like gets annoying at sometimes because it'll be like 10 or 15 seconds of just like you're getting like 20 frames per second. Um, but then you'll go a whole hour without any frame rate drops. So there are some, it does have frame rate issues. And I don't know what it's like on the Wii U, but there is frame rate issues on the Switch, unfortunately. But it's very minimal, and if you play on the gamepad, which I do most of the time anyway, it's fine. It's really nothing to worry about. The weather is incredible. The sound effects, the music, just the way it makes you feel when you're running around is awesome. Like some of the thunder, like the rainstorms and the windstorms that have blown through, and the firestorms I accidentally started, like it was like scary. Like I was like, I need to hide and get in shelter. I mean, it's just like I've gotten myself stuck a couple times. Like a huge rainstorm's come up and there's monsters and like I can't start a fire because it's pouring rain. I can't climb the rock wall to get out of the gorge because it's like pouring rain and it's slippery. And I either have to like teleport out or just tough it out. So it's pretty great. I highly recommend you go buy a Switch and you buy this game because in the future, when the Switch gets more things on the eShop, when it gets more games, when it gets more applets and functionality, when more people have it where you can actually play online before they start charging for online, then I'll start hating on it. Plays Breath of the Wild. It'll entertain you until the summer if you go buy it right now. I know there are some Switches in stocks on some places, specifically GameStops and Best Buys. I have not seen them at Walmarts or Targets, but I know you can find them online at some occasions. I have had a hard time finding a case. There's a very specific case I wanted, and I haven't been able to find it. It was a Nintendo brand one that was black. I ask every time I'm at a Target or Walmart or GameStop, and no one has one. But yeah, I think that's all my thoughts. I hope you enjoyed listening to my discussion. For the few of you out there that I know wanted to hear this, a lot of you ask why I don't do more. I play like almost exclusively Nintendo games, except for the couple PC games you see me put on YouTube, but I don't record the rest. I don't basically share very much Nintendo. I do on occasion, and I decide, okay, like I'll take the copyright infringement. I'll give Nintendo some free money of me playing this game. But Nintendo, if you didn't know, basically copyrights everything, the audio and visuals of everything. So even if you mute things, a lot of times they still pick it up. It's really dumb because not many gaming companies do this anymore. But Nintendo still thinks it's like free money for them and not free advertising. So yeah, I don't really do a lot of them because basically if I make a video of me playing these games, which I very easily could, Nintendo I know will copyright, especially the new games. Like the old games, some of them they don't have as good of a system in, and I've been able to get away with it. Like only half of the Super Mario World ones are copyrighted, and only like a quarter of Animal Crossing ones are, but I know they copyright these up in a second. So that's why you don't see Let's Plays of these or even gameplay footage, because Nintendo would copyright them up, and every ad you saw, they would get the money instead of me for the working time I put into recording and then especially editing them and uploading. But yeah, that's it for this episode. This chatter. Maybe in the future I'll have another one. Let me know what you think, or if there's something else you want my opinions on, put it down in the comments below, and maybe I'll do a discussion video on it, or if you want a more detailed breakdown of something. Stay tuned for some more Tornado Survival, some more. I'm maybe going to finish up a little bit of Stardew Valley. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you guys for watching. Oh, yeah, and Sky Factory. I'll talk to you guys later. See ya.